Do you ever find that your sounds just sound really dull and lack character and flavor? Well, fear not, because I'm going to show you today how, with only using Ableton stock effects, you can make your sound huge, fat, gritty, and exciting, no matter the source. So let's dive straight into it. So here we have a track which sounds a little something like this. Sounds pretty cool, eh? But we're going to bring the sounds to life using three very important tools which are all available in Ableton, which are Distortion, Saturation, and Overdrive. Now for Distortion, we're going to use Raw. For Saturation, we're going to use the Saturator. And for Overdrive, we're going to use Overdrive. Pretty straightforward. Now, let's just focus in on some of the sounds. So this bass sound here, the long bass. Let's play with Raw. Now, this is the new Wave Shaper Distortion in Ableton. It's one of my all-time favorite effects that they've added in. It is so good. So what this is Wave Shaper Distortion. So there are a bunch of different routings that you can do. So as just straight off the box, it's a single stage. You can choose between different shapes. If you increase the amount, this is how much you're basically driving the signal. There's some which are absolutely bonkers, like fractal, half wave, rectifier, and full wave, and there's some which are a bit more subtle, like soft sine, digital clip, and tube preamp. But there's a bunch of stages. You can also do series, so serial, so it will go through stage 1, then stage 2. So you have two different types. There's parallel, where they'll go both at the same time. Then you can choose the mix of what you want, which is also quite cool. But the one I love the most is multiband. So this gives you different distortions that you can do on the low band, a mid band, and a high band. Now the crossovers here, low is below 200 by default, mids is between 200 and 2 kilohertz, and highs is above 2 kilohertz, right? So this gives you a lot of control. And I think just out of the box, these sound really great, but you can change them to whatever you want them to be by clicking and dragging. But anyway, on the lows, I like adding a bit of tube, and you can turn them off to see what it's actually doing. So let's take a listen. Let's add a bit of distortion there. Now on the mids, let's crank up the amount and use something like polynomial maybe, which sounds pretty good. Now with the lows as well. Oh, it's getting crazy. On the highs, I like using noise injection pretty much all the time. Check this out. Let's just take that compression off. But listen to just the before and after now. So this was before. After. To me, that is night and day difference. So that's a bit aggressive. So I might turn the dry wet down a little bit here to maybe like 48%. But even still, check this out. Night and day. Now we're not done here. So another thing that I like using with Raw is if we group this and make a audio effect rack and click here, let's create a new chain like so. And I'm going to take Raw here and just copy it down to this other chain. Let's turn this one off. And for this one, let's go to mid-side mode. The mid-side mode is essentially you can add a distortion to the mid frequencies, so stuff that's mono, and then to the side frequencies, so the stereo information. Now this is where it gets pretty crazy. So you can blend between them, so you can have only mids, only stereos, and anything in between. But on the mids, let's add something really obnoxious like half-wave rectifier. Now bear with me, this is going to sound crazy, but check it out. So something really aggressive like that. Let's take the frequency down here. Then on the sides, let's add something not so aggressive, but something like digital clip. All right, and then bring them back in. Now I'm going to put the blend up to about 90% sides, or maybe like 85-15 in the favor of sides. And we can just mix this in to our original setting here. Now I might actually bump the compression up to full, So it's... Oh. So very aggressive compression there. And distortion. But mix this in a little bit. So if I turn this off, you should hear how the sides just jump open as well with flavor. Now, if I turn this off, night and day difference, right? It is such a cool technique. And you can do this on practically any sound. So on the drums, for example, this is really fun to do. So let's add raw here. I'm just going to do it before the EQ, actually. But let's do this in multi-band mode. Let's just zoom in. There we go. Now, on the lows, I'm not going to do anything because I don't want to distort the kick too much, if at all. But on the mids, let's do something like tube preamp, something a bit more subtle. And we should probably solo the drums. There we go. That sounds pretty good. Now, on the highs, let's use noise injection again. And took the frequency up to the top. Yeah. Now, this is pretty aggressive. I'm going to take the compressor down, but listen to how this sounds. Night and day difference, right? I'm just going to actually take the dry wet down to maybe only about 30%. But listen to how much grit that brings, how much character. So good, right? Now, again, let's do the mid-side mode. Let's just copy this down here. And focus only on the mids and sides. And I'm going to put the dry wet up to 100% here, but change this to mid-sides. So on the mids, let's do something absurd like full wave rectifier. Maybe actually half wave. Or maybe fractal. Oh, or shards. Right, let's use trifold. Nothing too crazy, but let's take the frequency down here. Like so. Now on the sides, let's just do something not as insane like polynomial. And then put the blend mode mostly to the sides. 90-10. And we can compress this as well. So let's mix this into the other signal here. Take that down a bit. But listen to this now. Oh, if I turn off the sides. Notice how the sides just jump open, particularly on those high elements, like the hi-hats and everything. Sounds so cool. But yeah, just be a little bit careful because you are going to be adding in harmonics. So it is going to make things a little bit brighter. So you might want to do a little tame around here. This is around 7K, just to tame that a little bit after the distortion. But yeah, listen to how much that's just brought everything to life in the mix now with the new bass and the distorted drums. Oh yeah. Pretty cool, eh? Let's take a look at some saturation. So let's do it on this pluck sound here. So let's just get the saturator up. Have this in solo. So there's a new update with the saturator. It's now a little bit sexier. But this is what it looks like now. If you open it up, you have a color curve, which is cool. So check this out. We have this sound. So let's do something nice like, I don't know, let's do soft sine, something subtle. Give it maybe about 4 dB of drive and just take down the output by roughly the same amount. So whatever we're driving, take it down. And take a listen. Listen to how much grit that is brought, how much excitement and character. It's night and day. Beautiful. Then on this color curve, I might just add a bit of a boost around 2K. Oh yeah. Then on this one, I can take this amount down. Yeah. Just so the lows aren't being excited too much. turn the dry wet down a little bit, but even still, check out this. This was before. And after. Just really brings that sound to life. So, saturating sounds is going to be a little bit more subtle than distortion, but it still does bring a nice color, warmth, and character to the sound. Let's talk about overdrive. So overdrive is somewhere in between saturation and distortion in terms of the color it brings. So on this pluck sound here, we have this. Let's move over where it's a little bit more prominent in the mix here. Right, so if I just turn on the overdrive, now the Ableton overdrive isn't the most sexy looking effect, but boy is it powerful. This is just stock overdrive right here. Pretty crazy. So if all you really need is like about 10 to 15% usually, just to give it a little bit of additional flavor. Like, even just that sounds great. But you can play with the tone, so I'm going to put it 100% wet. So you can turn the drive down or up. So obviously the more drive you have, the more smashed and aggressive it gets. There's also a filter, so you could just overdrive the lows here. Or the highs. That's a bit harsh, right? But yeah, let's just do a full spectrum overdrive action. Now the tone is going to shift it more towards the darker side, lower values, or if you go bright with higher values. So yeah, let's have a slightly brighter sound, but just take the dry wet down to about 20% or so. But like, listen to how much it makes that sound jump out now. Right? So, listen in context of the mix, I'll A-B it, turning it off. So this was before. With it. Just jumps out so much more. So yeah, overdrive can be pretty aggressive, depending on how hard you push it, but I recommend being a bit more subtle with it. But it can just be a little drag and drop the dry wet down, and boom, it sounds really good. Just giving it an extra little push. And I often like adding it on things like hi-hats as well, just to give them a little bit of an extra lift. For example, here on this group, on the drums over here, you could add the overdrive on the group. And then just put it down to about 5-10% with the highs in. Take it off. This gives it an extra little bit of thickness, right? So, great little tool you can use. Now, the only thing that... So yeah, it's up to you what you want to use. Distortion is usually going to be more aggressive and give you a lot more grit. Saturation tends to be a bit more subtle and can add warmth. Overdrive can be very aggressive, it can be more subtle, or anything in between. So it depends what you want. If you want a more aggressive flavor, go for distortion. If you want something a bit more subtle, go for saturation. If you want something in between, go for overdrive. They all have different characters and flavors, but they're used for essentially coloring the sound. Now, essentially, you can use them and abuse them on any sound, like particularly on synth-based instruments. To get them really rich and characterful often requires a lot of distortion, saturation, overdrive. But too much is going to just tear it to pieces and it won't sound good. So use it somewhat sparingly, but you can probably use a lot more than you think. Now, the only exceptions here really are with drums. Just make sure you don't push them too hard or you'll destroy all the transients. And with instruments like pianos or strings, you put too much distortion on, it starts sounding messed up very quickly. Case in point, let's add some raw on this piano here. So let's use just Bit Crusher or something, or Diode Clipper. Starting to sound pretty unnatural, particularly here. So yeah, it sounds pretty unnatural very quickly. So with things like pianos, you use saturation in very subtle amounts. And on vocals as well, like we know the human voice inside out, we hear it every day. We've heard it since birth. So too much distortion, too much saturation, too much overdrive is going to tear it apart. You have to be very, very subtle with vocals or anything that has a lot of detail in, like a piano, a stringed instrument, or anything like that. But yeah, go forth and add tons of distortion, saturation, overdrive on your sounds. Honestly, as you can see, it is the secret sauce to sounding full fat, and it's pretty straightforward to do. So there you have it, guys. That's how you can bring your sounds to life using stock Ableton tools, distortion, saturation, and overdrive. Just to recap, distortion is probably going to be the most aggressive out of all of them. Saturation tends to be more subtle, and overdrive is somewhere in between. You can use a lot of it, especially on synth-based sounds. On drums, be careful. You don't want to lose the transients. And on anything that has a lot of detail, like the pianos, voices, or strings, use saturation and use it very, very sparingly. So yeah, hopefully this helps you get better quality sounding mixes that sound full, rich, and full of character. Now, of course, this is just a small part of that, but if you want to learn a full mixing process, we have a free course available in our community on School called Marksman's Producer Academy. It's totally free to join. You can join via the link in the description. But also, there's tons of courses on arrangement, on low-end mixing, and all sorts of other stuff. So go check it out. Plus, you'll be part of a community of like-minded producers. Now, if you love this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and comment what you found the most useful. And if you want a video made on any topic, comment below. I read all the comments and respond to them. Now, if you want to take your music to the next level and do it quickly, and make at least 3 label-ready tracks within 6 months or less, consider having a chat with us directly about our accelerator program. We have a special offer running until the 28th of March. So if you want to learn more about that, there's a link to chat with me directly in the description as well. This is a paid opportunity, so if you aren't willing to invest in yourself, don't bother clicking the link. But if you are and want to take things to the next level quickly, let's have a chat about it. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Take care.